8th Douglas County Board of County Commissioners business meeting. We want to welcome those of you who are with us at the courthouse, as well as those of you joining us online. I just want to pass on a bit of information regarding how we'll run our meeting on Zoom during this time of social distancing. All participants will be entered into the meeting with their audio muted, meaning the commission and the public will not be able to hear you. Presenters will be unmuted when their agenda item comes up. We ask all online presenters to use good conference call etiquette and mute their line when not speaking and introduce themselves each time they speak. If you have public comment on an agenda item or under regular public comment, if you're in the courthouse with us, please come up to the front. If you're online, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom. Either way, staff will call on you and unmute you. We ask that all speakers will give their names and addresses for the minutes and keep all public comment to under 3 minutes. The county reserves the right to shut off the microphone and remove any speaker from the meeting if they are vulgar, rude, or inappropriate. A recording of this meeting will be available on our website after the meeting. We will get started with our consent agenda. Would any commissioner like to pull anything from the consent agenda? No.
No.
Have anyone online who would like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Okay, we're looking for a motion on the consent agenda.
This is Commissioner Reed. I move to approve today's consent agenda.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will move on to, it looks like, did we move general public comment back to the end of our agenda this week? Looks like we did. Okay. We will move on to our regular agenda, starting with item 2.1, Housing First pilot funding from Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services. Do we have a presentation on this item?
Commissioners, that we're going to ask to defer this item until next week. We got a message from KDADS that they'd like to, there's some processing on their end with the final version of the contract. It just needs to go through just get some boxes checked, it sounds like. But we hope to have a contract attached to your packet later this week or early next week. But for now, we need to defer it to next week. But I'm happy to answer any questions you may have based on what I provided.
Do you need anything from us to defer this to next week?
I don't think
Okay.
so. Cool.
If we are good, we will move on to item 2.2, discussion of a 5-member commission. Do we have a presentation on this item?
Thank you, Commissioners. I think I'm in the panel finally. Commissioners, earlier this year, we talked about bringing this item back after our budget deliberations to discuss how the commission wanted to move forward on this question. Jamie Hsu is also in the panel and is available to answer any questions. I spoke to our clerk Hsu earlier when we were putting this item on the agenda, and we really don't have a formal presentation for you. We simply included in the packet the materials were from before, and we're really hoping we could just start the commissioners could have a discussion and give staff direction as to where to go from here.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Jamie, for joining us this afternoon.
I'm glad to be here.
I did have a question about kind of timeline and what different timelines might look like if we were to bring this question to a ballot. Could you just go over for us how that would look?
If you wanted to put it on the November ballot, we would need it by the language in the resolution by September 1st of this year.
This Commissioner Reed here. If on this November's ballot, it would be just for a 2-year term initially. Is that correct, Jamie?
No, so that was we talked about that, and I don't have the slides in front of me, how the 2-year term would be if the election occurred after this year. So for this year, if you had it in November and it passed, you would pass the districts And then the 2 new commissioners would file with District 1 in June. And then they would be elected and they would be a full 4-year term, because the way the statute is set up is when you add 2 districts, they get added to the rotation with District 1, and District 2 and 3 stay the same. So if you were to do this outside of November, so if you did it like in 2022, that's when you would trigger the 2-year term and then the 4-year term. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you for clarifying that.
Do we have any additional questions from commissioners?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Kelly. Jamie, is there any cost for us to put it on the ballot, or is it just rolled into everything else that we're already doing on that ballot?
There's not a cost. Anytime that everyone in the county is voting, then any entity can put on a special question, and it doesn't have a cost. The only time there's a cost is if either it's a special election, or like in this upcoming primary where not everybody's voting in the county, then the entity would pay for it.
Thanks.
And I know, I didn't see it in the packet. I know that GIS created some possible maps. Sarah, do you know, I think they got shared with administration. Do you know where they are?
Yeah, Jamie, I do have some copies of, I didn't share them with the commission at this time until we got further direction on how we
Okay.
wanted to proceed.
Okay.
I think that the maps question well, before we have discussion, we may take questions. Do we have anyone? It doesn't look like we have anyone here with questions, but do we have anyone online who may have public comment on this item?
We just encourage if anybody online would like to have public comment on this item, that they use the raise the hand function on Zoom. I'm not seeing anyone.
I guess for me, we'll bring it back for discussion from commissioners. And for me, I kind of see these as 2 separate pieces. Do we want to expand to 5 rather than kind of looking at specific maps before that happens? Since maps can be drawn in all kinds of ways, the real question is, do we want to be a 3 or a 5-member commission rather than kind of getting into the nitty-gritties of maps before we know how the public feels about that? And we've had varying amounts of conversation around feedback on that. Sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
No, that's when in talking Leavenworth and other counties that have done this, the maps portion really happens after the election. I think in Leavenworth, they showed some possibilities, but they didn't really want it to kind of be about the maps. It was more about the commission.
Exactly.
So I guess I just want to, I appreciate Commissioner Kelly's question about clarifying that there's no cost for adding this to the ballot if we were to pass a resolution. I guess I'm curious if you can, or Sarah maybe can speak to, like, when we put a ballot question on, when we put a question on the ballot prior to the election day, what kind of, I guess, information sharing, like how can voters find information about the ballot question that they are considering, if that question makes sense?
I can give my perspective, and Jamie certainly can add some to this as well. You know, I think it really depends on what the commission would direct us to do. You know, we've not done something like this. So, you know, I haven't done a ton of research yet to sort of determine what other counties have done in terms of public information or information related to this before that, and what the commission is comfortable with doing in terms of that, in terms of, you know, how is that voiced and stated and so forth. Obviously, anything we do would have to be informational only and educational in nature. I'd say, so there's that piece too. But we would really want to take your lead in terms of what you felt comfortable with sort of putting out there, but I think we should anticipate that question that the public would then look to the commission to sort of say, so what are we really voting on?
It's always, I think it's always kind of a tricky position for an entity to be in when they put a question on a ballot, because you do want to educate the citizens, but you don't want to cross that line of advocacy for or against it. The commission kind of dealt with that when they did the special question a few years ago. So I think if you wanted to do informational, there's guidelines to it, and you just kind of stay within those guardrails. What I've heard in other counties where this has happened, usually there are citizen groups that kind of form either for or against, and really kind of the advocacy part sits in those. But I'm with Sarah, it would kind of be what the commission wants to. When I talk to some of the county clerks where this has happened, the commission, it's kind of also an interesting position because you're kind of talking about your positions. So they chose their words very carefully, so it didn't look like they were kind of protecting their positions or something like that. So I think it's kind of a tricky area.
I think this is a tricky one overall because I've heard from some folks in some of our more rural communities that are very excited about this possibility, but we also don't have a strong sense of overall how the county in general feels. And so I would be interested in hearing from my fellow commissioners if you all have had folks reach out to you. We're not making a decision about this today, but I'm hoping that we can have a bit of a discussion.
This is Commissioner Reed here. I have not had any outreach or correspondence about this from many residents. I would say short of the letter that we received in support from the mayor of Baldwin, Casey Semino, that's the only direct contact that I have had since being sworn in January. So I'm interested in considering this as a ballot measure to see what voter feedback is essentially, and if voters respond to it. But I guess concerned with wanting to make sure that folks know it is an issue. If it's going to be on the ballot, that we figure out how to make information about it visible. And I obviously understand those. I appreciate you mentioning those guidelines and kind of guardrails, Jamie, that exist, and that would have to be a very narrow focus, but making sure that like the presentation that was offered to us as a commission earlier this spring and details were available so people can inform themselves. But it has not been a conversation in the community for me since last year during the election when I was campaigning, not since being elected.
Yes, Commissioner Kelly, and it sounds like my experience is almost identical to Commissioner Reed's. I think when we had the conversation, can't remember if it was January or February, still in the winter time. I think I heard just some curiosity more than opinions really on it. Just like, tell me what that means. And then other than that, I've only received one email, and that was for Mayor Semino, and that's the only communication I've had. I think for me, I think it would be really helpful to hear from more people, especially if there was some type of, one of the ways, right, Jamie, is they could do a petition, and I'm not saying it has to be put on the ballot through a petition, but I think that's just helpful to know whether this is a small group of people or a large group of people who really feel strongly about this and want to get involved in helping share that information, because it is a little tricky for us in our positions without some sort of sense of what is the general public thinking right now. And I don't hear much about it really.
Well, and I think I have heard a bit more than both of you, but I will say it's not overwhelming correspondence on this. It's been a bit more correspondence, but I don't know that there's a significant organized group. And I think that's where I have a lot of hesitancy around pushing the petition route for a whole host of reasons, but one of the major ones being that we're still in a global pandemic. But I do hear what both of you are saying. If there isn't much kind of push in the community for this, I don't know that it's something that we want to spend a lot of time on from a kind of educational capacity piece.
If I could add anything, what I would say is that while the timing does work out with as how Jamie has outlined here, there is no, I mean, this item can be discussed again in the future. You know, if sometimes it takes initiatives a while to really gain some, you know, momentum and interest, and really the commission could consider this at any time if it wanted to. I do also think, you know, there would be some costs associated with moving to a 5-member commission. I don't anticipate that they would be, it depends on how you would view substantial. But obviously there'd be additional commissioner salaries, there'd be some renovations, there'd be some support in that way. That's often what I think of, just because of my orientation as an administrator, is people may ask, what would it cost to move to a 5-member commission? You know, it's really, I don't think it would take us long to determine that if on some of those things and bring it back to commissioners. But I would anticipate that, you know, if you decided to put it on the ballot this fall, we would be spending some time here in the next several weeks looking at ballot language, looking at educational materials, preparing educational materials, talking about that process. And we would just want to make sure we added that to our schedule.
Commissioner Reed here. I appreciate you bringing that up, Sarah. And I think something that I have been kind of just percolating on today in anticipation of this meeting was, or this discussion is, I am a little worried about the potential amount of time that is to be dedicated given a relatively short timeline. Particularly given we're finishing up a budget process and then anticipating a whole new process with the ARPA funds, which is not a typical part of the fall as you all schedule it. So I think I have some concerns about staff capacity, and I'm just not quite sure it makes sense for us to I guess rush it or move forward with it right away, because as you say, it's a conversation that we can kind of pick up anytime. And I'm curious if the public will have more feedback and generate sort of community conversations around it. I don't think that that's really predictable for us, but I think those are my, I guess, concerns about capacity and time, focus of time.
Well, it sounds like it may make sense for us to see if we do hear a lot more from our community. And if we don't move forward with this conversation now. If we do, then we can bring it back up. Does that, I know we're not making any decisions, but it sounds like we may have some agreement around that.
That sounds like some consensus to me too from our conversation.
Sounds good.
And that's the direction I was hoping to get, was if this was needed additional study or to bring further item in front of you. And I appreciate you all taking some time today to talk about it. And I appreciate our county clerk, who's very busy with advanced voting, and to take some time out to talk to the commission about the topic.
No problem.
Thank you, Jamie. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, we will move on to appointments. I know that we do have some appointments to consider this evening. Looks like we have 2 appointments to consider for the Property Crimes Compensation Board. Sarah, do you want to give us any additional information on this one?
We have a reappointment of Verdell Taylor, who is eligible for a second term, and I believe the I'm gonna find the name for the person filling the unexpired
Stephen
term.
Crane.
Okay, yeah, and that is an unexpired term that they would be filling.
I'll make a motion to appoint Verdell Taylor to the Property Crimes Compensation Board.
Second,
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Would you also like to make
I'll
a
make a
motion
motion
about
to
Stephen Crane?
appoint Stephen Crane to the Property Crimes Compensation Board.
second,
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And it looks like we have some Heritage Conservation Council appointments as well.
Yeah, correct. Mike Delaney and Patty Beatles are eligible for reappointment and are interested in continuing to serve.
is it possible to make a motion to approve both of them at the same time, Sarah?
If you name them both. Yep.
Okay. I move to reappoint Michael Delaney and Patty Beatles to the Heritage Conservation Council.
Second, with appreciation for all these two have done. They are great members of the Conservation Council.
All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And I believe those are all of the appointments that we have to consider for this evening. So we will move on to general public comment. We don't have anyone here at the courthouse for general public comment. Do we have anyone online for general public comment? Okay, we will move on to miscellaneous. Sarah, what do you have for us this week?
Commissioners, you have a memo from me in your packet, and there are no informational items this week, but a number of scheduling items that I wanted to point out to the commission. There's going to be another drug court graduation happening a week from Friday. Let us know if you want to attend that. We'll make sure we let the judge know. It'll be in these chambers here. And then also very excited to begin talking about that the State Board of Indigent Defense Services has announced that they will have a public hearing here in Lawrence and Douglas County about the possibility of expanded services and opening an office here in our district. That is Sunday, August 8th at the Arts Center from 3 to 5. And really hope folks get the word out and kind of express to that state agency how important those services are here in our community.
And I do know that that meeting requires pre-registration for public comment.
Yes.
And so I believe that we have that public notice on our website.
We will, and I think we're going to do some additional distribution of that information. It's pretty hot off the press for us. So hopefully we can all get the word out here in the next week or two to get folks engaged.
Fantastic.
That's all I have.
I would just point out that we are all here at masks because of new CDC guidance and new guidance from our local Lawrence Douglas County Public Health. Do we have a plan to have kind of further discussions with Lawrence Douglas County Public Health?
Yes, commissioners, based on your direction at, I believe, last week's meeting, I have talked to public health about having them come in and provide an update. Our next unified command meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 5th. Based off of some conversations with them, I think it'd be good to have that meeting, have that conversation, and then have them come to the county commission. Unified Command is currently meeting monthly, so it's been a bit since we've met, and obviously there have been some changes. So my plan was to have them come before the commission as an update on August 11th. In the meantime, I have had a conversation with the health department and health officers as well as their legal counsel. We're continuing to meet and determine, talk about the status of our community and where we're at and what we think lies ahead. And in the meantime, we strongly encourage folks to get vaccinated. The updates coming from public health and LMH Health are certainly disappointing for our community at this time.
I have really appreciated how accessible they've made both testing and vaccination, and I hope that folks will take advantage of that. I did see that Commissioner Reed posted about the potential of winning a bracelet for the rides at the county fair this weekend if folks go out and get their vaccine while visiting our county fair, which seems like a real win-win.
I appreciate you saying that, Commissioner Portillo, and I believe it's on the Douglas County Public Health website is a list of all the vaccine clinics going on. I know that every secondary school in Lawrence, and I think Perry Lecompton as well, and Baldwin is doing vaccine, and Eudora. They're all doing vaccine clinics. So I'm hoping that people aren't perceiving barriers. And I know that a lot of people in our community are doing all they can to try to get people to get vaccinated. So I want to encourage that.
This is Commissioner Reed here, and I'll just add that I also appreciate how available testing continues to be, and want to encourage people to get tested if they have any symptoms, vaccinated or not, and that is useful data for us and good information, of course, for you and your families to have also. So in addition to the fantastic incentive of a carnival bracelet, which is a hot ticket item on opening night, especially of the carnival tonight, that testing should be available in all kinds of locations. And I really appreciate all the coordination to do that at the fairgrounds, especially knowing that people are really excited about it and we have big crowds there this year. I also, I just had a short miscellaneous item, I suppose, sort of on the heel of reappointing some dedicated Heritage Conservation Council members. Wanted to compliment the HCC and the leadership of Jan Schuper-Eric to organize a relatively last minute, but super thorough and well-received conference down in Baldwin City last week, Thursday and Friday. And so I've received some independent compliments from folks who attended, both from and outside of Douglas County. And it's the first time the HCC has ever hosted something like that. So anyway, I think a lot of people have their eyes on Douglas County and the innovative projects that are happening here. So it's cool to be a leader in that. And I appreciate all the work that went into that, because it's no small feat to organize a conference anyway, let alone during COVID and, you know, in a summer.
Well, the next time we get together, the local primaries for City Commission and School Board will have been completed. So if you have not already gotten out to vote, please make sure you have a plan to vote if you're in Lawrence, and make sure that that happens before next Tuesday or on next Tuesday. But if we don't have anything else, we will adjourn. We're adjourned.